Well, YouTubers, we have here a big conference table full of toys on top. And what have we over here? Another toy, but this is more of an adult toy, isn't it? Marlin, Model 39A. Marlin Model 39 has great memories for me because it wasn't with this rifle, but with a Marlin Model 39M that I had my first hunting experience. And that one, the Model 39M, is the Mountie version. It has the straight stock and it has a shorter, heavy barrel on it. Not the full length barrel like the 39A. But it was also with Winchester Super X ammo that I had my first hunting experience. It was back in the year 1970 that at the time I owned a Colt Government Model 45 caliber automatic pistol, a Smith & Wesson Model 27 Highway Patrolman in .357 Magnum caliber, and a Smith & Wesson Model 29 in .44 Magnum caliber with the 8 3/8 inch barrel. And I got to meet some new friends at the time. There was Dwayne, and there was Doug, and there was Ray. And we all shared the interest in shooting. I didn't know at the time, but we had gone to the range about 2 or 3 times. I didn't know that they were scoping me out to see if I was going to be a good hunting partner for them. I had been an avid reader since 1967, so I had a lot of head knowledge, but very little practical field knowledge at the time. And I think they were impressed at my knowledge of firearms, and they just needed to know whether I was going to be a good field person or not. So first there was this trip out to this place called Del Rio Canyon, and we were after ground squirrels. Well, there weren't too many of them there, but I was able to get one at 75 yards, and Ray was almost beside himself because he said, "Wow, you got him. You hit him in the guts. There's guts all over the place." Well, when the rest of the fellas found out that I didn't know what ground squirrels were, they thought that I better go with them to a place called Del Rio Canyon first before they took me out to the main event. Well, Del Rio Canyon is kind of a desolate area off of Highway 5, and when we went out there weren't that many squirrels. Well, Doug let me use his Marlin bolt-action magazine-fed .22 with a scope on it, and I carried that out there, and we went over the top of this ridge and looked down into the canyon, and there were some burrows down there, and lo and behold, there were some ground squirrels running around. And so the distance was about 125 yards, and I opened up with that Marlin bolt gun, and on the second shot hit one of the squirrels, and that got Ray so excited that he just kind of started yelling, "You got him! Oh, there's guts everywhere. You shot him in the guts." Well, it took me another 2 more shots to put that squirrel out of his misery, and I guess I passed with flying colors, because the next thing I knew, they wanted me to go with them out to a place in Weed, California. Well, it was really interesting the way the fellas did this expedition, and they packed everything up, and we took off at around 5 o'clock in the morning, got out to Weed, and pulled into the general store, and the first thing they did was they bought a flat of beer. So 4 6-packs of beer, and then we went out to the rancher's property, and going into the road toward the ranch house, the driver, Dwayne, was trying to hit the ground squirrels that were running across the road. There's so many ground squirrels. So I was quite anticipatory about the hunt, just seeing that. And we got to the rancher's house, and Doug knocked on the door, and the rancher came out, and Doug asked for permission to hunt ground squirrels that day, and handed him the flat of beer. And the rancher said, "Sure, go ahead, but just be careful not to shoot any of my cows." And that's how the hunt started. So we drove a fair distance into the rancher's property, and Dwayne pulled off the road and we set up a base. Well, I looked up the hill and there were ground squirrels running all over the place. And so I grabbed a Marlin Model 39 Mountie and a box of shells, and I went up the hill and said to the guys, I'm going to get a couple of them. Well, I went up the hill and made sure that I was shooting at the right angle so that everything was safe, backstop and all that kind of thing, loaded up. And the first squirrel I shot was kind of standing up, kind of vertical. And I picked him off and got 3 more, and that was even before the guys got everything unloaded. Early in the hunt, Doug and Dwayne took off with the center fires to hunt magpies. And it was going to be a long hike for them to go into where the magpies were, but Doug was using his heavy-barreled custom 270 with 90 grain Sierra bullets, and his powder charge was 1.5 grains over maximum. I thought that was very amazing, but he was sure it was safe, and it was. And Dwayne was using a 222 Magnum, and light kicking and very accurate, as was the 270. They brought back magpies. Magpies are big birds, kind of like scavenging type birds, but when Doug and Dwayne brought those back, they were pretty shot up with those 270 and 222 Magnums. Well, while Doug and Dwayne were out after the magpies, that left Ray and I to hunt the dry creek bed with 22 rifles. And it was great hunting in there because the squirrels would come running along the side of the dry creek bed and we'd try to make noises to get them to stop. But what Ray did a lot of times was he did this quick draw with his Ruger Super Single 6 and the 22 Magnum cylinder, and he'd do a quick draw and try and pick the squirrels off from his hip shooting. Well, he didn't connect that day, but I do remember getting some squirrels to stop and picking them off with a 22 rifle. And the most memorable shot was with that 39 Mountie, when the squirrel was running along and I kind of led him and fired, and the squirrel did about 3 somersaults. It was a fantastic experience in that dry creek bed. Also very memorable was when Ray on this trail stepped right over this rattlesnake. And I saw it, but Ray didn't. And I just told Ray, just keep walking, just keep walking. And I stopped. And he walked and he kept going. And then I said, Ray, look what you almost stepped on. It was a rattlesnake. And of course, it wasn't making any rattling sounds or anything like this. But we dispatched it with our 22s and just shot the head almost completely off just to make sure it was dead. And then we went on with our hunting. Later on, when we all met together again and we saw the magpies, we told Doug and Dwayne about the rattlesnake, and Dwayne was all excited about it. He went back up the trail and found the rattlesnake and cut the rattle off and brought it back and showed us how he could make the rattle sound just by rattling the rattle. During a lull, we actually had a little informal competition shooting the Super Single 6 Ruger. Each one of us fired 1 shot. There were 2 Super Single 6s along. There was Ray's and there was Dwayne's. And we used Dwayne's Super Single 6, and we fired 1 shot at this board that had this tack sticking in it. And the idea was to hit the tack. Well, I was the 3rd one to shoot, and I put my 22 bullet right at 9 o'clock, almost touching the tack. And then Dwayne shot his shot, and he hit his at 6 o'clock, almost touching the tack. And we went up there just like that movie, Sergeant York, looking at the board, trying to figure out who was closer. We figured out it was a dead heat between the 2 bullets. That was memorable also. Let it be known that all the guys are great shots, especially Doug. He could do one-handed shooting with his Victor 22 target pistol. Amazing. X-rings at 25 yards. So we know they can all shoot. I was lucky that day. Just matching Dwayne's shot. This was apparent later on when we shot the center fires across this canyon. And what happened there was I could hit the ground squirrels with a 222 Magnum pretty regularly at 250 yards or so. But when I fired Doug's 270, even with those light 90 grain bullets, that thing kicked like a mule. And I I couldn't shoot that very accurately, making no contact with the ground squirrels out at 400 yards. But Doug sure could. Well, I must have some accountant blood in me, because at the end of the day, my own calculations about how many ground squirrels I shot was 125 ground squirrels that day. Fantastic. Well, it turns out that about another month later, we did another expedition up to Weed, California, and one of the guys brought his girlfriend Jan along. And she was a great sport, because it was one gal going out into the wilds with four guys. Kind of amazing, really. But she could sure fill out a pair of jeans, and that long black hair, very memorable. About as memorable as the boys shooting some jackrabbits. And one time they chased a jackrabbit into this culvert pipe. And there was one of the boys on each end of the pipe and waiting for the jackrabbit to come out, and almost envisioned them shooting at each other. No, they didn't do that. However, Jan did succeed in barking a salamander off of a log with a Savage Unshoe Model 54, 22 long rifle caliber. YouTubers out there, take care. And that was my first hunting experience.